Good afternoon. This is the pre-hearing conference in case number 9610 with regard to the application of Baltimore Gas and Electric Company to make adjustments to its gas and electric base rates. Let us begin today by taking appearances, starting with the utility.
David Ralph on behalf of Baltimore Gas and Electric. I would also like to enter the appearance of my colleagues, John C. Corse, Daniel W. Herson, Jessica Rabba, and Beverly A. Sakura. We will enter Pro Hoc Vice at a later date.
Thank you.
Margaret Witherup from Gordon Feinblatt on behalf of W.R. Grace and the Maryland Energy Group. We filed a petition to intervene in the case. And I'd also like to introduce my colleague David Bugelmans, who's also here on behalf of the Maryland Energy Group.
Thank you, Ms. Winthrop.
Anna Ryan for the Office of People's Counsel, and I'd also like to enter the appearance of my colleagues Jacob Auslander and Patrick O'Loughlin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Lloyd Spivak for the Commission staff. I'd also like to enter the appearance of Michael Dean in this case.
Thank you, Mr. Spivak. Are there any other parties that wish to make an appearance? Good morning.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. James McGee with Alexander and Cleaver on behalf of C.P. Crane.
Good afternoon. Brian Green on behalf of H.A. Wagner, LLC, with Green Herlocker, and I'd also like to enter the appearance of my colleague Eric Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Green.
Good afternoon. John McNutt on behalf of the United States Department of Defense and all other federal executive agencies.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Jeffrey Brundage here on behalf of NRG Energy, Direct Energy, Vistra Energy, and Interstate Gas Supply. We've filed a petition to intervene. And my colleague is also here, Karen Omori, and we'll be filing a pro hoc motion for her once today adjourns.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Barry Naum from the law firm of Spillman, Thomas & Battle. I represent Walmart, Inc. I do have a pro hoc vice motion that will be filed. Therefore, I'm not formally appearing, but I'm here for observational reasons and to answer any questions the Commission might have at your discretion.
Thank you. And you said you represent Walmart?
Walmart, Inc.,
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have before us 5 petitions to intervene filed by the United States Department of Defense and all other federal executive agencies, the Energy Supplier Coalition, the Maryland Energy Group and W.R. Grace, C.P. Crane LLC, and H.A. Wagner LLC. Are there any opposition?
Mr. Chairman, there's also Walmart and NRG Direct Energy. For some reason,
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll add Walmart and NRG to that list. Are there any opposition to these 7 petitions? Okay, seeing none, the petitions are granted. Counsel for the utility, do you have an exhibit that you'd like to have admitted?
Yes, I do. In compliance with this Commission's Order 89138, in this case, BGE filed with the Commission its proof of publication on June 24th, 2019, wherein BGE certified that it published notice of the pre-hearing conference in 2 papers of general circulation in BGE's service territory, as well as posted such notice on its homepage and through its social media accounts. I have copies of the proof of service. If I can approach, I have already passed out to counsel.
You may.
And I would ask that it be marked as BGE Exhibit 1 and moved into admission.
This document with proof of publication is so marked as BG Exhibit number 1. Are there any objections? Seeing none, BG Exhibit 1 is moved into evidence. In terms of the procedural schedule for our matter before us, Mr. Spivak, could you provide us with the schedule?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Now, I have to say up front that the schedule that is before you has been negotiated between staff and BGE and OPC. The other interveners had not really previously had an opportunity to comment. They have been provided with it before this hearing, but not long before this hearing. So we may ask to go off the record for a little bit and see if there's anything further they need.
Okay.
But that said, what we have in the schedule is the company will file its supplemental direct and updates to actuals on August 23rd, 2019 at noon, or at least by noon. Intervenor direct testimony will be filed on September 10th, 2019. The company will file its rebuttal testimony again by noon on October 4th, 2019. Rebuttal testimony would be due October 22nd, 2019. Staff would file a comparison chart 2 days after that on the 24th of October. And the evidentiary hearings would run from October 25th through November 1st. What we've done for briefs is basically say 2 weeks after the hearings end, and that's in anticipation that we might not need all of the days that we've set aside for hearing, and likewise the reply brief is then keyed off the date for the brief. And the proposed order that is as per statute.
Thank you, Mr. Spivak. We have the proposed order being due on December 20th, 2019. Do any of the parties that are not at the table have any concerns or issues with the procedural schedule? You could approach either microphone.
Good afternoon. John McNutt on behalf of the United States Department of Defense and all of the federal executive agencies. From a just purely procedural perspective, the United States government is a huge consumer of electricity from BG&E. We spend more than $30 million a year, at least, in electric and gas service for our major facilities in the service territory. We do not have experts on staff. We have to go out through the FAR to procure experts through a competitive bid process. That process can take up to 60 days. So from our perspective, a deadline of September 10th to file direct testimony is way too aggressive, and effectively is going to bar us from being able to participate in this proceeding in a practical matter. We simply don't have the capability to hire experts at the drop of a hat. It takes time. It's a competitive process. So I would request a minimum of 30-day extension on the direct testimony deadline.
Mr. McDunn, as you're aware, we have by statute 180 days within a supplemental 30 days if necessary to issue this. This is a compressed time frame as it is. Where would we make up that additional 30 days?
I don't have a particular schedule in mind, but I can say from our perspective that September 10th is simply too aggressive a date for the intervener direct testimony.
Thank you. Mr. McGee, I see you have a question. Thank you, Mr. McDunn.
Yes, Your Honor. A couple points. First, as it relates to the number of days, and Mr. Spivak alluded to, perhaps we might not need all of them. So for a schedule to start on a Friday and then a weekend and then 5 more days might be difficult for us. My clients are coming in from Chicago, and to have them start then when we think it might not last 6 days, if it starts on Monday, I think that might be more convenient for them and maybe some of the other parties. And the other point is on the schedule for the initial briefs. Generally, there have been 3 weeks, and this is pushed to 2 weeks, and that might also be difficult in order to meet a time frame like that. So we'd ask that be moved out to 3 weeks.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. Yes, I do recognize that we were beginning the hearing on a Friday. That does take into effect some considerations as well for the commissioners. So that was not an accident. Did commissioners have any questions?
I was just wondering what other parties might have to procure experts similar to the federal government, which doesn't have the capability to do that so quickly. Does it affect anybody else? Okay.
All right. Thank you. Seeing no other questions from the bench. It's the opinion of the chair, in order for us to get an order out by December 20th, we will adopt the proposed schedule as noted by staff and the parties of the table. I recognize...
Oh, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Could I? Oh, I'm
Please.
sorry.
Sorry, Commissioner Herman.
I was just going to say that with respect to Mr. McGee's comment, if you get closer to hearing and you can, and, you know, there's stipulations that certain witnesses may not have to appear, we can always revisit that Friday start if it doesn't appear that it's necessary. So we'll keep, you know, we can keep it for now. If it appears that it may not be necessary, we can always revisit that issue, Mr. McGee.
That sounds reasonable. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the procedural schedule is adopted, noting the concerns raised by Mr. McGee and Mr. McDunn. Do the parties have discovery procedures for this matter?
Just as specified on the sheet, essentially with respect to the updates to actuals, BG has agreed to a 5 business day turnaround on data requests just with respect to the actuals and the supplemental testimony explaining them. Beyond that, the parties have agreed on essentially what's become the customary discovery progression, which is initially 10 business days. Once the once the intervenor direct testimony is filed, that goes to 7 business days. And once the rebuttal testimony is filed, that becomes 5 business days.
Thank you. Do any of the parties have any issues or concerns with the discovery procedure? Seeing none, the discovery procedures are adopted. If there are any discovery disputes, they should be brought to the Commission's attention promptly, and we will resolve them as quickly as we can. I believe discovery has commenced for staff and OPC. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Discovery will immediately commence for all other parties to this matter. At this point, we also have to address the issue of evening public hearings. In recent rate cases, we've had between 3 and 5 public hearings in the BG&E service territory. Does any party have an objection to scheduling 3 public hearings for this matter? Seeing none, I will ask the utility to work with the Executive Secretary on the dates and locations for these 3 hearings.
We will.
Thank you. Are there any other matters that need to be addressed before we adjourn this afternoon?
Nothing further from staff, Your Honor.
Thank you. And seeing no others from the table or the interveners in the audience, this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.